welcome everybody. We'll wait a couple more moments here. Marty, if you would mute your computer while I'm...
Yeah.
And Marty, if you will, just admit anyone that you see come in. I'll get us kicked off here, though, if you're ready. Looks like we got some people still coming in. All right, folks. Well, welcome. Welcome to today's QC webinar. Marty's going to walk us through all of the important updates from this year and kind of explain to you how you can better make your QC policy and program that you're using at your firm work better for you. So I'm going to start just by shamelessly plugging my own webinar. I asked Marty if it would be all right if I hopped on here and kind of let you know I work on the condo analytics side of the business. If anybody has issues with condos, we're doing a 2023 year in review, November 14th. So if you enjoy today's webinar, please join that one as well. You can reach out to info@thecommonwealthgroup.net and I can send you a link, or just email me directly, ndesanis@thecommonwealth.net. I'll be happy to send you a link. But today we're talking about quality control. And I think, sorry, people keep on hopping in here and it beeps every time one of you comes in. Let's talk about quality control. So Marty runs our quality control department over here. I think that a lot of folks give quality control a bad rap. It's just something that you have to do. It's a cost. It's not something that people get very excited about. You know, you get in trouble if you're an underwriter, if you made a mistake and whatnot. It kind of gets a bad rap. It really should not. Quality control is completely critical to your organization. It is the most important thing that you do on an ongoing basis that keeps your organization alive. If you don't have a great quality control program, that's how you get repurchases. That's where these issues get found, and nobody can afford repurchases in this kind of market. So making sure that you have a great quality control plan in place and then following it and actually doing what's in the plan is absolutely critical to your organization. One of the things that we do here at the Commonwealth Group is we have a consulting arm and we write quality control plans tailored to your organization to make sure that, you know, it works for you. Not everybody's QC plan is the same. Every lender is different. Marty will get into all that later, but it is really important that you have a great quality control plan and you follow it, because obviously times are tough right now. I don't think anybody in this business is doing particularly great. And obviously we're not immune to that. I'm sure nobody on this call is immune to that. We're all feeling it right now. We just need to live to fight another day, and keeping your organization healthy and having a good QC plan to prevent these repurchases is what's going to keep you alive and get us through this downtime. So on top of that, the last thing I want to add is just, as you grow your organization, having a good QC plan in place is going to be what lets you take those next steps. If you want to sign up with a great investor like US Bank or someone, you're going to need to have that QC plan handy. You're going to need to show it to them, and they're going to read it. And they're going to go through and look at your QC reports and make sure that you're doing what you say you're doing. They're also going to make sure that you know, you're writing quality loans and you're not going to be a problem customer for them. So if you want to go delegated with any of the main investors, or if you want to become a Fannie Mae servicer seller, which is something that we also help lenders achieve through our consulting arm, you need to have a great QC plan, and you need to be able to produce 3 months, 6 months. It depends on the investor, but for Fannie Mae, you're going to need to be able to produce that stuff, and they are going to review it with a fine-tooth comb. So that being said, QC is very important. It can also be used to help your organization. I'm going to turn it over to Marty here. He's going to walk you through what has changed this year and what it means for you and your organization and how you can make it better work for you. Like I said, no two organizations are the same. No two QC plans should be the same. You should make it tailored to your organization. If you guys want any help with that, please reach out to us. We're happy to assist with that type of project. So Marty, without further ado, take us away.
Sure. Thanks, Nick. Sorry, I had to turn my camera off because my computer was getting a little slow there. So I hope everybody's okay with just looking at the slideshow here. So hopefully I can turn it on here at the end. But yeah, thank you to everybody for coming. I see some current customers in here, and then some folks we don't quite work with yet. So we appreciate y'all joining us, and we're excited to share what we learned. So we at the QC department here at the Commonwealth Group, we went up to Washington, D.C. this past September to attend the FNMA QC Boot Camp. It was an amazing experience. We saw some really cool sights. We saw the White House. We had a great meal. The weather was perfect. And then right before we left, we sat down with the head of Mora Audits for Fannie Mae to talk about quality control. So it was a perfect cap to the nice half week trip we had up there. So we brought back a couple of best practices, I'd say, and we're going to mainly be talking about pre-funding QC today. I know there are lots of topics as it pertains to quality control in Fannie Mae, but pre-funding seems to be at the top of everybody's mind right now. It's the newest requirement from Fannie Mae, so we're going to kind of break that down and talk about what exactly they're looking for. So if you can imagine this, their guidelines were a little vague, Fannie Mae. I know it's crazy, but they were. So what we're going to do is try to read in between the lines of some of those guidelines. We're going to go beyond the guide, if you will. So this is a great publication they put out that they pointed us to when we were up at the QC Boot Camp. It's called Beyond the Guide from Fannie Mae, and this is exactly what it does. It goes beyond the QC selling guide, and it really says all the things that they were trying to say, I guess, or it maybe didn't in the exact verbiage, but this is a great tool. You can Google it. It's called Beyond the Guide. Just type in Fannie Mae Beyond the Guide. It should pop right up. If you can't find it, let me know. I'd be happy to send it over to you. But this is section 2 that covers pre-funding QC, which is what we're covering today. So let's get into it. And I'm just going to hit the high points here, but if you read the first paragraph here, it turns out they intentionally left the guidance a little bit vague. All they said was pre-funding QC is now required. Everybody has to do 10%. And then they mentioned something about component reviews. So the reason they left it vague is because every organization is going to be different. Your community bank down in Arkansas is going to be different from your nationwide bank up in New York City. It's going to be different than your mom and pop bank down in Florida. Like, they're all going to be different. They're all going to have different clientele. They're all going to be doing different types of loan products. They're all going to have different types of defects that they're having to field. So I guess Fannie didn't want to put overarching guidance on everybody to treat everybody the exact same, because as much as we like to think it, everybody's a little bit different in the kind of business they're doing. So they want to allow you the flexibility to customize your QC system to be exactly what it needs to be. And we're going to talk about a couple key things that it needs to be. So I think the first main point is pre-funding QC sampling strategy and defect rates. So I'm not going to go into the details of the different types of pre-funding QC systems that you can see up here. Y'all can check those out on your own time. But more than likely, I bet a lot of people look like this first one. We got the announcement. We know that we have to do 10% of pre-funding QC. So let's just sample 10%. Let's do some full file reviews and check that pre-funding QC box. But is that what Fannie Mae was really trying to tell us? So let's take a look at that. And I think we should start with defect rates here. So typically when you think of defect rates as they pertain to QC, you think of something really bad. So like when you think of post-closing QC, you think of a defect that is in a file, it's already closed, we can't change it, it's probably going to be a buyback, we have some problems, we don't like defects. It's actually quite the opposite for pre-funding quality control. They want you to find defects, because that means if you find the defect before the loan closes, that means you can fix it, which is a lot better than finding a defect in a loan that's already closed where your hands are kind of tied. So that's kind of the first point I want to make. We're looking for defects here. So when we think that way, just go with me here, is randomly sampling 10% of your loan production and doing a full file review, is that the best way to uncover defects in your organization? I mean, you may hit some defects sometimes, but more likely than not, there are probably a couple of other things that you could be doing. And this is kind of where I'm going to introduce that component review that they mentioned in the announcement. So if you don't know, component reviews are taking a look at certain aspects of the loan file. So that could be your income calculation, that could be gifted funds documentation, that could be a rental income calculation. It could be whatever you want, but the point being, it's a specific part of the file. It's not the whole file. So with that in mind, component reviews actually count towards your total sample size of pre-funding QC. So for example, if you have a component review on self-employed borrowers and you took a look at a total of 5 files with self-employed borrower income calculations for borrowers, and let's say you closed 35 loans that month, just as an example, you'd be exceeding your 10% pre-funding QC requirement. And there are a couple, and that's essentially what they're trying to tell us here. Like, they want you to be performing component reviews. They actually put the emphasis on component reviews, because more likely than not, what you're trying to do in a component review, depending on what part of the country you're in, you're trying to find items that are either inherently complicated for everybody across the board, or items that potentially have given your organization a little bit of trouble in the past. So the idea here is that by looking at a specific component of the file, you're spending a fraction of the amount of time that you normally would looking at a full file, which means you're saving your employees time, or you're allowing people to look at a lot more files that could potentially be problematic than just randomly selecting 10%, because it goes back to that theme of Fannie Mae. They're wanting us to find defects in our production, because guess what? If we find them before the loan closes, we can actually fix them. And let's be honest, we're all human here. We all make mistakes. It happens. And it's probably a good idea to maybe focus those component reviews on those inherently complicated things like self-employed borrower income calculations. Because let's face it, when you're looking at a borrower with 4 different companies and you're looking at 4 different tax return forms for maybe 2 different years, it gets complicated. It's easy to transpose a number, and it's not a bad thing to have a second pair of eyes on something like that. And if you're trying to mitigate risks and you're trying to make sure that a defect doesn't occur before the loan closes, it's a win-win for everybody. So I think that is the main takeaway from what we discussed on the pre-funding side at their boot camp. Let's move along to this next slide. So full files versus component. I already kind of just jumped into that a little bit. So the point being that we want to focus on the component reviews because they are actually a much better use of our time. They're more effective in uncovering defects. And why not? Because they already count towards that total sample size of the file selection. Now, they also talk a little bit about the pre-funding cycle timing. And I don't want to read this line by line, but it's important that everybody across your organization, at least in the operations side, is aware of the pre-funding QC requirement, because it does throw a little bit of a hiccup into your normal operation if you didn't have a pre-funding QC process in place already. You need to allow for maybe a little extra time or some stops in the loan process as far as the pipeline is concerned, so that you pick up the right time for when you take a look at the pre-funding QC. So we're able to customize that here at the Commonwealth Group. The only guidance that Fannie Mae talks about in regards to the timing of the pre-funding QC is it just needs to happen before closing. But there's that sweet spot where you've got enough information in the file as far as comparing it to the underwriting conditions and the documents that have already been uploaded, and that it's in comparison to when it's ready for closing and everything's in the loan package. So We have some folks that let us take a look at it at conditional approved status. That means it hasn't had the CTC quite yet. That means the borrower is probably not waiting at the closing table for you to have their loan ready for them. So that we can work with you on that. That may be a good option for some folks. But if you want to have the most effective pre-funding QC review, you really want to do that after the underwriter has issued the clear to close on the file, because that means that they've looked at everything. There's no wiggle room, there's no gray area, and all the proper documentation is in the file already. The biggest objection to right before or right after CTC is the timing of the pre-funding QC review. They say, listen, we don't know when the closing is going to be. In a perfect world, we'd like to allow for 2 to 3 days in between CTC and closing, but we know that's not always the case. One way around that is we do offer same-day pre-funding QC turn times here at the Commonwealth Group. So if you get a file to us that morning before noon Eastern, we're able to take a look at it and give you a decision on whether or not the correct credit decision was made before the end of the business that day, so that maybe that should allow enough time for closing. And if you get it to us that afternoon, we try to have it to you back the next morning as well. So we offer same day turn times at maximum 24 hours, but rarely it does take that long. And honestly, that's mostly for our full file reviews. Component reviews we're able to turn a little bit quicker. But I thought that was really interesting after hearing Fannie Mae talk about what they were actually looking for, and the whole concept of actually seeking out defects in a file, seeking out problems in files and correcting them before the loan closes. It's counterintuitive almost when you talk about QC, because you typically don't want to get defects. You don't want to see defects, but that's actually the complete opposite in pre-funding QC. You do want to find the defects. That means you're looking for the right things. That means you're identifying the right things that are giving your underwriters problems. And you're fixing them before the loan closes, obviously preventing buybacks, which are not fun at any time, but especially right now given the market. But we're happy to put our heads together with you and maybe take a look at your current QC reporting and see if we can identify some trends with you. Maybe be some good ideas for you to pick up on the component side, because let's face it, I think that's really the most effective use of your time on pre-funding QC. Now, you do have to have full file reviews every now and then, but honestly, it needs to be a lesser percentage than your component reviews. Number one, because full file reviews take longer, but really they're random, and that's really not the best way to try to find defects in your pipeline. Another thing to think about is really I know everybody knows that production and quality control need to be separate in your organization. That's a given. But another thing that you need to think about is how separate are they? I mean, technically on paper, they could be separate in your organization, but do they sit across from each other? Are they across the hall from each other? Are they in the next office over? I'm saying that because maybe some sort of bias could be implemented into that. Coworkers talk, coworkers go to lunch together, coworkers have happy hours together, and that's perfectly fine. That's the way it should be. But every little thing that you can do to prevent any sort of bias coming into play, or prevent any bias in decision making, whether an auditor is going to ding an underwriter on an income calculation because they're going to a happy hour later that night and they don't want to have that awkward conversation. Anything you can do to maybe prevent that risk is always a good thing. And, we're happy to help with the Commonwealth Group. QC is probably one of the easiest things to outsource. It's one of the cheapest things too. That being said, we have an underwriting department as well. We welcome you to utilize that. We have over 200 lenders in every state across the country. So they're used to seeing all types of file types from all different borrower backgrounds, all different property types, every single region you can think of. They have that experience and that breadth of knowledge that, only can come with experience of working with lenders across the country. So we certainly hope that you look to us for some sort of assistance, because let's face it, right now it's pretty tough out there, and we're of the mindset that we need to work together. We need to put our heads together and think of solutions together. So even if you're not a QC customer of ours and you have some questions about any sort of QC process, we're happy to field them. that we're not going to charge anything for that. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing here and work together. So please keep that in mind as you do develop your QC system, and hopefully enhance it to a point where you're regularly detecting defects and files. And we'd love to bounce some ideas off you as well to hopefully help that happen. And I think I covered just about everything. Nick, did I leave anything out?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Just to reiterate, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, this whole component review idea of course, like, why bother spending 10% of, your time on 10% of production when one of those 10% might be a W-2 borrower that's got a 50% LTV and is making, a ton of money at some tech company. You just kind of wasted a pre-funding QC on them. Yeah, sure, it got through, but like, you could have spent that time and that, to that allocation of the 10% on something that was an actual risk item. Like, we know it's the whole idea is directing you towards those high risk items and getting you to address the high risk loans in favor of the low risk loans. And obviously, the loan officers out there, I don't know if any are on the call, are going to, if they have one of those low risk ones, they're going to want that to get through. They're not going to want to have, their self-employed borrower with 4 businesses and 20 rental properties get, tagged as a pre-funding QC. But really, for the health of your organization, that is exactly what you should be looking at. That's the highest risk loan that you're going to do. It's the most likely to have some sort of issue with it, either documentation wise or calculation wise. Of course, that's what Fannie Mae wants. Fannie Mae does not want to deal with repurchases either. Like that, that's not their goal here. They are trying to prevent them, and they're trying to get you to prevent them. And yeah, I just wanted to harp on that, because that is kind of the moral of the story, and like the point of this webinar, and what you should be taking away from it is that you can make your QC policy for pre-funding QC work better for you, and help keep your organization healthy and prevent repurchases, because that nobody wants that. Nobody benefits, right? So yeah, just to reiterate that. No, I don't have anything else to add though, Marty. If anybody has any questions, please send them into the chat. If you think of something later, or have any questions about quality control in general, or you'd like us to look over your plan, or whatever the case may be, please just send an inquiry to info@thecommonwealth.net, and we would be more than happy to assist, or at least look at your scenario and give you some sort of guidance. If you're wondering, is what I'm doing enough? Am I meeting the requirements? Ask us. This is what we do for a living over here. So with that being said, we can give you some of your time back today, unless you have anything, Marty. Oh, I see something came into the chat.
Thank you for that. If you don't take anything else away from the call, it's these two things. One, pre-funding QC defects are good. That means you're doing it correctly. That means you're finding defects in files before they close. That's the whole point of it. And two, use component reviews. They take less time. They're more effective. They count towards the 10%. Or even more. It's okay if you do more than 10% too. You don't have to just do 10%. It means you're potentially looking at more problematic loans. It's okay to do more than 10% too. So with that's all for QC. We are doing a little something fun today. It's a little different, so bear with me. We're gonna kind of raffle off a pre-funding QC review. And if you're a current customer, then congratulations. If you're not, then feel free to test us out, or whatever you would like to do with it. We certainly hope you use it. This morning we had 111 people register. Thank you again for attending. I think we have a little less. I know things come up. I miss webinars all the time, unfortunately, but I'm going to do this spin here, and I've got the attendee list listed out from 1 to 111 based on the time that you registered. So I'm going to spin it. Everybody holding their breath. Number 5. Let's go. That's exciting. All right, number 5, Misty Brewer. I redacted your company and email address for privacy's sake, but Misty will find you after this and we'll send you over that free funding review. We certainly hope you use it. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you all, and we will send out. Oh, we got a question in here, Marty.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from income-based component reviews, what other areas would you recommend?
That's a great question. We asked the same one. Of course, Fannie says it's going to be different for everybody, but they did share with us top defects. So this was interesting. If base income was a top defect that caused a repurchase, rental income calculations, as you can imagine, self-employed income calculations, and missing items on the VOL, like a student loan payment. Hopefully we get away from those a little bit, but the zero payment items that are listed on the VOL, not properly documenting omission of debt, that was one. And then lastly, collateral. So, collateral is a big one, and unfortunately, it's the most subjective one as well. We did gain access to Collateral Underwriter for the appraisals, in which we're going through some training on the 15th of this month. So we'll have a little bit more on that going forward on the collateral piece, and maybe have another webinar. But maybe think of SSR risk scores over 4.5. Maybe that'll trigger a component review. The higher risk appraisals, or maybe an LTV trigger item, that might be a good idea as well, just to cover the collateral piece. But honestly, the most common are income and collateral. And then take a look at your QC reporting to see if there's anything else that pops out to you.
Marty, you said something earlier today as well about, like, if you have a loan with SSR scores in excess of a certain number, that's like normal for your market. Like, I think that's a really good way to kind of manage the collateral piece.
Yep.
Anything above, for some areas, if you're in a really rural area, it might be a little bit higher. If you don't have a lot of good comps and whatnot, but that's probably a pretty good way to manage that.
Yep. High SSR scores at a certain threshold and high LTVs would be good for the collateral piece.
Great.
Okay.
We will be sending a copy of this presentation. All right. We got one from Helda saying that she's received 2 calls of buyers checking to see if they are doing the 5% down on 2 to 4 family investment property homes. Is this true?
I'd be happy to answer this one after the call, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, because I think we need a little bit more context on that one. All right, folks, we will be sending a copy of this presentation out. Cody, we'll get on that after this call. And if you do have any more questions, Helda will take care of you after this call. But please just send your scenario into info@thecommonwealth. We love this kind of stuff. We like putting puzzles together and figuring these things out together. We're your partner, so let us know if you have any questions. Other than that, have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. Have a good November, and happy Thanksgiving. If you don't join my condo webinar later this month on the 14th, we are doing a full review of all of the changes in the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac condo guidelines and an Ask Us Anything. If you have any questions about that, please send them in. We'll address them on that call on the 14th. If you'd like a link to register, please give me an email or shoot the info@thecommonwealth.net box in an email, and we'll send you a link to register. Thank you all very much for joining today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your days. Take care.
Yep. Happy hunting.